Hey guys, Chicago injury lawyer Scott DeSalvo here, and in today's video I want to talk to you about what makes a workers' comp case valuable, how to figure out what a workers' comp case might be worth, right? And so I've covered this a little bit in my other videos, but I thought it was a good opportunity to refresh it because I had a gentleman who called me who, makes a pretty good sum of money and also has a pretty serious injury. And I went through all of this stuff for him, and it occurred to me that this is good information for anyone who got hurt at work to know, right? So the first thing you should know is that each state has its own workers' comp laws, right? So my primary office, my main office is in Chicago, Illinois. So obviously I'm very familiar with Illinois workers' comp law, but your state law definitely varies. And in places like Texas, they changed the workers' comp law so severely that lawyers don't even handle workers' comp cases in Texas, which is bad news for people in Texas. I actually get a lot of phone calls from people in Texas who are getting sort of worked over by the system and need help. But not only am I not licensed down there, the system has really cut down on or eliminated a worker's right to be represented by an attorney in a work injury case. So Texas is bad news in that regard. But what are the two or three things that really drive value in a workers' comp case? Well, I'll tell you the first thing. The first thing is, what is your average weekly rate? In other words, how much do you make a week in pay? Okay, so how do we calculate that? Well, if you're full-time and you work 40 hours a week and you make 20 bucks an hour, 40 hours per week times 20 bucks an hour is 800, right? If you make $10 an hour, 40 hours is 400. If you work overtime and it's company ordered overtime, in other words, you can't reject it, you have to work it, then that gets added to your average weekly wage. So why is average weekly wage so important in workers' comp? Well, I'll tell you. Basically, the way it works is every injury that you receive is reduced to a number of weeks of work in Illinois workers' comp, okay? So if your injury corresponds to 10 weeks of your average weekly wage, and that's what your case resolves for in front of a judge or settlement-wise, 10 weeks times 400 is $4,000, and that's your settlement. Or let's say you're a max, you make a lot of money, what we call a max rater. Let's say you're making, just so the math is easy, you're making 20 bucks an hour, but your injuries correspond to 100 weeks of work, right? So 20 times 40 is 800, times 100 is $80,000, right? And that's only one part of it. That's the calculation for what's called PPD, right? Permanent partial disability. But you're also entitled in a workers' comp case to get paid while you're off work, 2/3 of your salary. And you're also entitled to have all of your medical care that's related covered, right? So we're just referring to the lump sum of money, the PPD, how much money you would get at the end of that. So obviously you can see how earning more money per hour or more money on average at work really increases the value of the case. So what is the second factor? The second factor is how serious the injury is, right? So if you bump your leg and you have a bruise on your leg, that is less serious than if you break your leg. And if you break your leg without surgery, that's less serious than breaking your leg where you have to have surgery to fix the repair. And even more serious than that is 2 or 3 surgeries on your leg. And so the seriousness of the injury and the amount of treatment you get for an injury drives the number of weeks that injury is going to be held to be representative of, right? So just like we were talking about a minute or two ago, they take your average weekly wage times the number of weeks. So a bump and bruise on the leg might be worth, I don't know, 5 weeks. but a major surgery on your leg might be worth 50 or 100 weeks. So the nature of the injury and the amount of treatment is a major driver of that. The third one I want to talk to you about is permanency, okay? And it sort of goes along with number two, but it's so important that it bears discussing on its own. So the first thing you need to know is that in workers' comp, in theory, if there are no permanent consequences to an injury, technically you're not entitled to PPD at all, permanent partial disability at all. In other words, if you get hurt and you're right as rain and there's absolutely no permanent consequences of any kind whatsoever, in theory, the judge would be justified in awarding you zero for PPD, or, permanent partial disability, the lump sum of money you get at the end of the case. But as a practical matter, that never really happens. Virtually every injury is awarded some degree of PPD because any injury you sustain in your body does change you. And then it's just the degree, and that's the third factor I wanted to talk to you about. The more permanency, the more valuable the case. And we'll use the same leg analogy, right? So you bump and bruise your leg, and after, let's say, 6 or 8 weeks of therapy, you're right as rain. Well, that's going to be held to be, maybe 5% of a leg, something like that, 3% of a leg. And then they would, maybe it's 8 weeks, 5 weeks of pay for that injury because you healed and you're right as rain. But what happens on the other end of the spectrum if you have multiple surgeries and even after the surgeries you have a permanent limp and your leg is not right? And all of that is documented by all the doctors you saw. Well, that permanency, the degree to which you have a permanent negative consequence from an injury, really drives the value of the case. So those are the three big things that drive value in a workers' comp case. How much you make per hour and per week, what is the nature of the injury and the medical care you get, and what is your outcome or how permanent your outcome is. So I actually have a case settlement calculator that it's on my website. I'll put a link to it in the bottom of this video, and you can actually go there and answer just maybe 10 or 15 seconds worth of questions. It's only like a few questions, and it'll give you a settlement range value on your case. So if you're interested in doing that, check the link below. I'll leave the link to the page that has the case settlement value quiz, or calculator rather. And then otherwise, if you have been hurt at work and you're interested in protecting your rights and maximizing what you get in your workers' comp case, please give me a call. You can always reach me 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at 312-500-4500. So any questions, if you need help, if you have questions about this or any of my other videos, love to hear from you, 312-500-4500. And I hope the info in this video helped you. Hope you're having a great day. It's actually beautiful out. It started cold and cloudy today, and now it's in the 80s and partly cloudy and a beautiful sunny day as I drive home with a bag full of more work to do today. But anyway, thanks for watching the video. Have a great one and take care.